Right, and then on this page, you guys, we are going to practice using these shading techniques on our different shapes to make them go from flat or two-dimensional to three-dimensional. So first we have a cube, and it kind of already looks more three-dimensional than just a square does, but we're going to add some things to it. So if my light source is on the top up here, then these two sides are going to be equal distance from that. So I'm going to add some shading to them. And kids always ask me, should it be light gray, middle gray, dark gray? As long as it's darker than white and lighter than black, I think you're okay. So I'm just going to go light gray just because that's quicker. But both these sides should be the same. They're both the same distance from the light. They're both getting the same amount of the light blocked. And then we do need to add a horizon line. Remember, horizon lines can go through the object or above the object, but it wouldn't be below it because then the object would look like it's floating. And then that line already helps us add, I'm just going to kind of do a square around that, add some sense of depth to this so it looks like it's sitting on a table now. But now that you're third graders, we don't want to just have a line. We want to either have the wall be darker or the table be darker. They're both not the same shade. So this time, let's use some cross hatching. So I'm going to do diagonal lines one way. And then I'm going to come back and do diagonal lines the other way. There's some cross hatching so that it looks like there's something back there. So I don't just have a line in the middle of a white space. All right, and then we would need to do our shadow. This time though, the shadow is actually going to be covered up by the box if the light is straight over top. So we don't actually need to draw a shadow. All right, let's move on to our next one. So again, let's start with our horizon line. Our horizon line could go through the object or it could be above. Let's put it above. And this time, let's stipple above that. Stippling, remember, is the little dots. If you go too fast, they might start to become lines, so you don't want to do that. Just get some dots all the way across the back. And then our light source on this one is coming from the right. So that means the left side is going to be the darkest. Instead of drawing a straight line across here, I want it to be kind of curved. And then in that area, we're going to go as dark as our pencil can go. This is going to be our black. Go as dark as you can without breaking your pencil or ripping your paper. Then we're going to do another curve. And in that area, you are going to go dark gray. We want it to be lighter than our last shade, but not too much. We want it to show that it's going to get lighter and lighter as it gets closer to the light source. We want that whole area to be about the same shade. So I have some areas that I need to just darken up just a little bit. All right, then our next one, still going to be curving around the shape, and this is going to be our middle gray, just normal pencil pressure. And then our last little area we're going to make, still curved at the bottom there, is going to be light gray. There can be more space between your lines. And then leave the top white. All right, so we have our horizon line, we have our shading on our object, and now we need to do our shadow. Our shadow is always going to be the opposite from our light source, so it's going to come off to this side. It usually touches the darkest part of the object, and it usually mimics the shape. So mine is going to go right off the edge here. Inside the shadow, I like to use scumbling. Scumbling is when I do little circles, and right up next to the object, it's going to be pretty dark, and then it's going to start to get lighter, those little circles, as it comes away from the object. Okay, then we're going to go down and do our sphere. Now this one is a really good example of something that looks super flat right now. It looks just like a circle. And I'm going to turn this circle into a three-dimensional sphere, hopefully. So I have my sphere and I have my outside of my little box here. I'm going to do my horizon line. Remember, it can go through the object or it can be above the object. And this time I'm going to go through. And both of the last times I colored above the line. So now I'm going to color below the line. And we haven't done hatching back there, so let's do some hatching. Hatching, remember, is just diagonal lines one way. Trying to keep it even all the way across. Okay, then we're going to go on to the shading on our object. If my light source is on the top right, then the darkest part is going to be on the bottom left. And I see a lot of students want to just do a straight line across here. We want to actually make a curve to show that this sphere is rounded. So make sure it curves up in both corners. And then we're going to fill that in with our darkest shade that we can make with our pencil without breaking our pencil or ripping our paper. Okay, then we're going to keep going. After black, we're going to have our dark gray. Again, it's going to be curved up on the corners. Pretty dark shade. Definitely lighter than the last one. Okay, then we're going to have our next layer, and this is going to be, again, curved. Notice that I'm like halfway across the ball right now, or halfway across the sphere. I'm way past the horizon line on this side, but I'm not up to it yet on this side because my curves are following that light. This is going to be my normal pressure, my pencil. And you can definitely twist your paper as you go. Do what works best for you and your hand. You don't have to just draw straight on. Now those two shades look pretty close to me, so I'm going to go back to my darker gray and just darken it up a little bit. You want to be checking that as you go. Darken up my black a little bit. All right, and then this is the weird one. This last one, we're going to go by the light and we're going to use the side of the ball and make a little oval. Now it's easier for me to make an oval if I turn my paper some. Inside that oval, that's the highlight. We're going to leave that white, and then outside we're going to make it light gray. With our light gray, the lines can be spaced out a little bit more. Okay, then our last step on this one is going to be to do our shadow. Our shadow from our light. So if our light's on the top right, our shadow's on the bottom left. And it's going to mimic the shape. So it's rounded. It kind of ends up looking like an oval. And then we're going to use our scumbling right next to the object, super dark. Little circles, and then getting lighter as it comes away from the object. All right, and then we're going to do our last shape here, which is another cube, but this time our light source is from the bottom. So let's give ourselves a little field to work with. And then again, let's draw our horizon line through the box. And again, let's color on the bottom down here. Let's use just stippling. To go kind of slow and steady if you don't want your little dots to turn into lines. Stippling is not a technique we use all that often, but it's good to remember that it's one that we can use. Okay, and then on the cube, if the light source is shining up from underneath, then we would have a little bit of shading on this. And again, students will ask me how dark. Well, it at least needs to be darker than white because it's going to have a little bit of shade. I'm going to color the same shade on the other side, the same value. And I just started going cross-hatching on that side, so I better do cross-hatching on this side too. So they look the same. And then the top needs to be darker. So I've got these two light gray, and the top needs to be darker. You could go all the way to black if you wanted to, but you wouldn't have to. It would just depend on what color the actual cube was and how bright the actual light bulb was, how dark the room was. And then with this one, the shadow would actually be cast up onto the ceiling, which we don't see, so we don't need to draw a shadow. All right, now that we've practiced these 4 together, I am going to have you work on these ones by yourself. So you need to do the sphere, the cube, and the cone by yourself, and you are trying to replicate or copy the shades that you see up on the top. So you're going to, I drew the horizon line. You need to make sure you make a difference between your horizon line and the table that it's sitting on. You need to get your shades on the object. So there should be some white, light gray, middle gray, dark gray, black. And then you need to make sure you don't forget your shadow on all 3 of these. Those are going to be kind of like your assessment, or we might say like your test for this part of the unit. So do your best on all 3 of those. So again, horizon line, either shade above or below. Get your shadows on the object, or excuse me, your shading on the object and your shadow off the object, okay? Do all 3 of them, and then you can turn this in to the turn-in tray. All right, you guys, I can't wait to see what you create.